There's a feel-good decision, and then there's the financial decision. And sometimes they might be the same thing, but they're not always. And so if you're really looking for financial independence, you want to make sure you know what the right financial decision is. And it's our final question on the show today. My wife and I have 2 children. Our kids are nearing college age, and I'm not sure whether to cut back on retirement contributions to fund education. What should we do? So another question here about potentially cutting back on retirement contributions, which we talked about in a previous question, in lieu of to create the ability to pay down a mortgage. This question is more about making retirement or making contributions to an education fund. Let me tell you, I know about paying for college, okay? I've got 2 in college right now, about to have a third just in the next few days. It can be expensive. You don't want to really laden your kids with that debt if at all possible. And I understand how much a parent's love for their children will make them want to not have to make them take out a student loan. They'd love to pay for that college, and it's probably not very likely that you're going to cash flow it, right? Especially if you have multiple kids getting into college at the same time. Scholarships can help, but they may not make all the difference. But I want to caution Greg from considering about taking retirement or drawing back rather on retirement contributions in order to do this. So I've got a friend who has 2 daughters, one junior in college and one senior in high school. The junior in college is going to cost them $12,000 per semester for college tuition, room, and board. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
And this is an in-state school, by the way. Now, they're trying to figure out how to pay for that, right? The daughter has been in college for 2 years, about to begin the 3rd year, and they've got one about to come in right behind her, so they're going to have 2 in there at the same time. So you have to really think about how can you help without hurting your retirement. So, John, I think the thing I think about first is if you say to somebody, and this is our belief, that you should make sure you're on track for your own financial independence before helping out your children. I think it can sound like, well, that's pretty selfish, right? That's not a very sacrificial thing to do. But if you play that out, it actually is, because if you don't take care of yourself and you're not financially independent and can't pay your bills in retirement, who's going to be doing that?
Scott, there is no do-over on retirement. There's no student loan program, no bailout, no nothing for retirement. It's on you. And the only thing that really the government has for you is a Social Security check, and you know you can't live on that. So let's talk through this for just a second. I have a question. You're more in tune with this than I am. Is the word work during college like you just don't do it anymore? I don't know if I see a lot of people gainfully employed and going to college at the same time. Is it just too hard, or what's the situation?
I think some of that might depend on what you're studying.
Okay.
As a radio and TV major, I can tell you I worked just fine during school and had no problem making the grades.
Taxing on the brain cells,
exactly.
Right?
So I think that might depend, right? And it might depend year to year, because at some point they may have to do some shadowing, they may have to do some interning, and they're not going to pay for that. But yes, and schools offer that, right?
Yes.
Schools offer some work programs that work study programs that allow you to pay some tuition that way too. So there are other outlets, to your point.
Well, and I think that here's the bottom line. You may not want to have your kids take out a student loan. And I understand that thought process. But that student loan can be the savior of your retirement program if you think about it. Now, the kid may not necessarily have to pay that student loan. You may pay it yourself, but you have to think about, just like if you go out and get on an airplane. Scott, we're going to be traveling a little bit later on in the week. If you think about the thing that they will tell you at the airplane, on the airplane, is that if the mask drops down, put your mask on first before you help the person next to you. Why? Because that person may not know how to do it, and you can't help them if you're out of oxygen.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing kind of applies here. I think you have to know whether you're on track for financial independence. And if you are, then okay, that may be a completely different conversation. But if you're not, do not sacrifice your financial independence for the benefit of your kids' college education.
So here are the action steps for you, Greg. Ideally, you could potentially do both, but you won't know until you create a retirement plan first. See what cutting back on your contributions would do to your retirement? What kind of impact would it have on your retirement income? So there potentially could be money there to help fund college if you're on track for your retirement. And it's never too late to look to things like a 529 plan. Those are college savings plans. You can set them up through a website here in the state of Arkansas. It's tax deductible to make those contributions on a state income tax level. You can do that while your kids are still young. You can do that while they're in their teenage years. You can even do it while they're in college, because you can make that contribution, put it into a savings account that earns some interest, and then take it right back out to pay for tuition and still get the college or the tax deduction for that. So I think there are options, but again, you have to answer those questions first. Are you on track for your own retirement? And one more comment to that, too, when I was talking about my friend that has 2 kids. If you do go all in and try to pay for all of your kids' college expenses and you have more than one, ideally you're going to want to do for the second and the third and the fourth what you did for the first, right? So just think about where that snowballs to as well. So I think the reality here is there are ways to help your kids, but don't do it to the detriment of your own retirement. And that's going to be it. The final bell sounds. So it's time for our final thoughts. John, we'll start with you.
Well, Scott, as I kind of think about the questions that have come in today, there's a lot of bobbing and weaving going on. A lot of people are feeling the effects of inflation. We didn't even talk about the effects of inflation on college education because inflation in college has actually been way higher than regular inflation. But here's the situation that I think you've got to steel yourself toward. Financial independence is your number one priority for you. No one is going to be more interested in your financial well-being than you. Your kids have a lot of time. They have a lot of opportunity to make up for any student loan debt that they may come off with. They actually could build a lot of character by working and things of that nature. There's a lot here when you start thinking about, should I stop contributing to my plan for financial independence to pay off my mortgage or send kids to college or take care of elderly parents or whatever the case may be. Financial independence is something you get one shot at. And I think it is so critical that you ice that down first in order for you to be able to continue on and help other people along the way once you are financially independent.
Yeah, my final thought, John, you said something earlier about not making financial decisions based on your emotion.
Yes.
You know, there's a feel-good decision and then there's the financial decision. And sometimes they might be the same thing, but they're not always. And so if you're really looking for financial independence, you want to make sure you know what the right financial decision is. It may not always be right, but it's always probably going to be the better financial decision that could impact your future in a greater way than making a decision based on feelings. And the best way to do that is to work with a financial advisor who brings an objective viewpoint to the table. And I would encourage everyone listening to do that. That's all the time we have for this week's show. Thank you for watching. Love the questions this week. We hope you get them to us for next week as well. You can do that by calling or texting to 501-381-5228. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next time.